So welcome back to Rob's Camino, and the question this week is a very common question. Should I book my Camino accommodation? The answer, in my mind, is kind of yes and no. I'll explain coming right up. Okay, so I read a lot, particularly online on Facebook groups and forums about people planning their first Camino, and they get very stressed about accommodation. And look, I get that. It's this big adventure. Maybe you're not used to sort of hiking long distances. Maybe you're not used to being in a foreign country, and it all can seem quite a bit scary. How are we going to find a bed at night? Will we find a bed? And a lot of people, I think, through fear, tend to go overboard and book ahead too much. Now, book ahead is kind of a weird term, because booking means you're booking ahead anyway, doesn't it? You're not booking behind. But what I mean is they book too far ahead, and that can be a bit of a problem. So let's kind of unbox this whole booking accommodation thing, and I'll just share my thoughts on when I think it's a good thing and when I think it's a bad thing. And maybe if you're planning your first Camino, that will help you decide. So I think those who are a little bit anxious about the whole thing, they will jump online and however long they're walking, a week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, they'll try to book every night, and then they think that's great, I can relax, I know I've got my accommodation booked and I can just enjoy the walk. Or indeed, some may go and book with a sort of a tour group who organises it all for you, and they provide accommodation bookings, and they'll provide luggage transfers and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of people think this is great, it's taking a load off my mind and I can just relax and walk. Doesn't quite work like that though. So let's kind of uncover this a little bit and we'll talk about why. Excuse me. I would generally say to people, I'm not anti-booking. I'm anti-booking too much. So let's explain that. I book, and I'll explain how I do that. I would generally say to people, don't make too many bookings. Let's say you're going to be walking for 20 days or something. I would never say to someone, go and book all 20 days accommodation. Why? Because it's totally inflexible, and it's highly unlikely that it's going to work for you. And what do I mean by that? Particularly if it's your very first Camino, you're not going to know how comfortable you are in hiking long distances. Even if you're a bit of a hiker, the Camino is a bit of a different thing. It's not just an all-out hike. You're going to be meeting lots of other people along the way, depending on which route you're walking. You're going to be sightseeing along the way, and it's very hard to judge how far you're going to walk. So, how are you going to plan that if you're booking 20 days accommodation? Okay, we're going to walk 20 k's a day, and then you get there and you find actually you can't. It's like after 15 your legs are killing you, and 20 k's is too much. Or conversely, it could be, well, gee, that was easy, it's only midday, we could be walking 25 k's a day. So there's that distance element. There's also the social element. You're going to meet lots of amazing people on your Camino, unless you're on a very remote one, and you're going to buddy up with them. You're going to form these, quick, quite deep relationships with people, and you find that you'll be wanting to stay in the same places that they're staying. If not necessarily the same facility, although very often, you do, it will be maybe the same village, so that you can all have dinner tonight and things like that. So you find yourself wanting to be with certain people, and if you've booked a lot of nights ahead, it could mean that you can't stay with Jim and Mary that you've just met, because you've got to walk another 5 k's to your accommodation, and you miss out having dinner with them. So it's another reason why it can be a little bit too inflexible. Probably the main reason is that you could get injured or extremely tired, and maybe you want to have a rest day, and you thought, oh, I'd planned a rest day for day 10, but actually I find I need one after day 7. What are you going to do? Just keep going for 3 days and get even more injured? I think on Wasn't too bad on my last one, but all my first 3 Caminos, I certainly got injuries that held me up. You know, maybe I had to go and see a physio and they'd say, take a rest day, or I had to change my distances and walk a short day. What happened on my last one? That was a particularly long one. That was 60 days walking. I did go and see a physio a couple of times, but I was able to sort of fit that into my schedule. But yeah, so on my last Camino, I did have to take days off, and they weren't planned days off. That's the main point that I'm making. You know, it was a case of the next big town I come to, I'm going to have a day off and go and see a physio. So those are all the reasons why booking too far ahead kind of doesn't work. And look, don't get me wrong, I've met lots and lots of people who have been walking with a fully booked Camino, who have walked with tour groups where everything is booked for them. And I haven't met one yet that found it worked for them. You know, so if you've done that and it worked really well for you, do comment down below. But all the people I've met who have kind of booked their complete Camino like that, they found that they were having to catch up with buses and taxis because the distances were too far, or they got injured, and that created all sorts of booking hassles, and they had to change, you know, 10 or 20 bookings. So it can be a lot of drama. Let's go back to the earlier part where I said a lot of people may feel the need to book their whole Camino because they're a little bit worried about not finding accommodation. That's not going to be the case generally, and I'll go through some exceptions. You're going to be able to find a bed on your Camino a few days ahead without any problem. You don't need to book the whole thing. So if there's a key message in this video, it would be, don't book the whole thing because it's not going to work for you. Excuse me, I've got itchy nose. What are some of the reasons that I would book ahead? And I do book. I will confess that I do book. I'm not going to book a whole Camino, but I'll talk about my last one in a moment. If I was going to be only walking the final 100 kilometers of the Camino Frances from Sarria to Santiago, I would think about booking each day if it was during a busy period. May, September tend to be the busy periods. I'd be keeping an eye out on Facebook and forums and things and seeing how busy it was. You know, so I would consider it then, because that's a particularly busy part of the Camino Frances. If I was walking the Camino Frances again, I've walked that 3 times, but always I've left in the last week of April. If I was walking that during a busy period, I would certainly book as far as Pamplona. So the busy periods again, sort of May, September. When I've been walking last week of April, I have generally booked as far as Pamplona. The reason is that you get bottlenecks at Roncesvalles. That's a bit of a choke point. And sometimes if people are arriving late in a busy period, they might not get a bed. Zubiri currently is a bit of a choke point. It has been for years. But once people get as far as Pamplona, they kind of thin out a bit and there's more accommodation options, and you know, it becomes less of an issue. So that's another area where I would consider booking. I think whatever Camino I was walking, I would probably book the first 1 or 2 days. That's just me. A lot of people would say, Rob, you know, why would you even bother doing that? I just like to know that I've got a bed for the first day or 2. And as I ease into my Camino. And if you've watched any of my videos, you'll know I always ease in with short days to begin with. So I'm booking a short day, I know I've got a bed that first day, that second day, and then I'll wing it from there. Maybe in a busy period like Semana Santa, which is where all the parades take place running up to Easter. So this year, in 2023, I walked the Via de la Plata leaving Sevilla, and I made sure that I left Sevilla a week before Semana Santa because I'd read that, you know, it's crazy in terms of trying to get accommodation, and I was freaking out a little bit about accommodation, and so I booked 7 or 8 days, my first 7 or 8 days, which I wouldn't normally do, but it was only that it was Semana Santa. I was a little bit concerned that it could be getting very busy. But the reason I felt comfortable doing it is that the walking distances on the Via del Plata are almost kind of set for you. There's very few options. So it wasn't going to be like on day 3, I would be saying to myself, oh no, I wish I could have walked another 5Ks, I should be staying in the next village. There was no next village. There was, the first sort of 7 or 8 days, there was only certain places you could stay anyway. So I just thought I'd book those ahead in case it got busy during Semana Santa. And it didn't. So there you go. I was catering to my own fears in that example. It wasn't busy at all, the albergues. I think maybe in Monasterio, I think one place I had booked, and it was pretty busy when I got there. When I say that I tend to book accommodation, I do book 1 or 2 days ahead, generally 1 day ahead, that's it. So my routine when I'm on Camino, let's say I might have booked my first couple of days, just so I don't have to worry about finding a bed. I'm definitely not booking 20, 30, 40 days, because it just doesn't work. If there's one message in this video, that doesn't work. But having booked my first couple of days, what I'll then do is I'll usually book a day ahead. And I've got into that habit walking with Pat, my wife. She likes to know that she's got a bed the next day, because we're both very slow walkers. We don't want to be involved in a bed race, and we're generally arriving somewhere after everyone else. So we just like that sort of comfort of knowing that day we've got a bed. We don't have to rush. And then in the evening, usually while we're having a little bit of a break before dinner, we'll get out Booking.com or Grunza or something like that, and we'll say, where should we walk tomorrow? So we're only planning a day or 2 ahead. How do you feel? Oh, I reckon I could do 20 Ks. Well, maybe we'll go to this place. What do you think of this Casa Rural or this albergue? And we might book it ahead. Definitely I do that with Pat. My last Camino, I did wing it a lot more intentionally. So I was walking the Via de la Plata and then the Invierno. And I buddied up with some people who were staying primarily in albergues. So I wanted to stay in a lot of albergues. Really wanted to embrace that side of the Camino, and I stayed in lots of donativos and municipals, which you can't book, which is nice. It takes that option away, doesn't it? And it was fine, not a problem at all. Just rock up and always got a bed. I never found a full albergue. So there we go. I think, to my mind, if I come back to the beginning, to go and book your whole Camino, if you've done that and it works for you, let me know down below. I don't want to be sort of totally one-eyed or biased on this. For me, I just can't see how I'm going to know in 20 days the distance I'm capable of walking, or who I might have met and want to spend time with, or who knows. I just can't see it working for me. So I guess the general message is, don't sweat about it. If it's a particularly busy time of year, if it's a little bit of a choke point, like the first few days on the Camino Frances, yes, I'll be booking those. Maybe book a day ahead. But the freedom it gives you of not doing it is great. And like all things Camino, I think when you step outside your comfort zone a little bit, it's really cool. And you just let go. And I really did that on my last Camino, particularly as I was walking with quite a few people who were staying in albergues and we weren't booking, and the freedom of all of that was just really nice. You realise that you don't need to stress about it. You're going to find a bed generally. Not generally, you always will. There's another question down below. Have you ever not found a bed? If you freewheel it, if you just wing it on Camino, have you ever not found a bed? I don't know anyone who's never found a bed. So there we go, just some thoughts around booking accommodation. Please don't think I'm sort of trying to be particularly forceful about this. You are not to book your Camino end to end. It's really just in the interest of helping people, like all these videos, in the interest of helping people have the best Camino they possibly can. And I've just seen too many people not have a great Camino because they've tried to book the whole thing ahead of time. One of the other topics that kind of goes hand in hand with this is luggage transport. How about we talk about that next time? And I'm not totally against that either, but we'll go through the pros and cons, and I'll share a few thoughts on that. But thanks for watching. Love to hear your comments down below, and see you next time. Bye for now.